We got so many people in here. What major announcement?
What we were promised. You didn't come true.
Is that right? What'd you tell her, Tony? Questions first.
What is your major announcement?
No, I just wanted to look at this opportunity to let the fans know that this will more than likely be my last season in the National Football League. With this being the final home game, wanted to definitely get an opportunity to say goodbye to the burgundy and gold faithful. I've been the fans at FedEx have been so graceful to me since my 7 years here in Washington. I'm about 99% certain that this will be my last season in the National Football League, and I got to leave at least 1% just in case I change my mind. But it's really just about having another conversation with my wife. But just thought with this being final home game, this being Dallas Cowboy week, an opportunity to go out on a bang, get the fans riled up, say thank you to them, and beat the Cowboys. What better way to end it?
When would that 99 turn into 100? When are you going to have this talk with your wife?
Well, I want to put on a nice suit when I go to that 100%. But again, it's coming into the season. I was probably about 90%. So the other 99%, I guess, the 9% has come since the seasons began. Really just looking at last year in our run, where I thought the state of the franchise was. I didn't feel like my work was done here just yet, but as this season is gone, really wanted to help Perry Riley develop a little bit more. I think he's at that point where Perry doesn't need me anymore. He's that player that I know he can be. Wanted to still do some things as far as getting the franchise where I wanted to be. Really, I think what every player wants to do is leave a legacy, and that's really what I wanted to do as a player while I came back one more year. Just more about a legacy, nothing about anything more I could accomplish, because I've played in 2 Super Bowls, had the fortune of winning one, then losing one, been to the Pro Bowls and all that, but just wanted to continue to help with the legacy.
London, you said that last year and it started this year about you felt such a good place about the direction of the franchise. The season's been so tough. Yeah. You really think your work is done because you're leaving a team that's got 3 wins?
It's the way I look at it is totally different. I've thought about this and contemplate this a lot. Thinking about obviously with the last couple of weeks with everything that's happened with the whole speculations and everybody throwing their hat into what they may or may not think is going to happen with Coach Shanahan and the team after this season's over with. The way I look at it, I think Coach Shanahan is a great coach. Any player who's played for him, most guys, probably 95% of the guys who play for him would love playing for him. And as I look at the current situation, I think Coach Shanahan is definitely the right guy. I think Mr. Snyder would be wise to let him see this thing through. Not obviously there's going to have to be some changes made, because when you right now we've won 3 ball games. Even if we win these next 2, we'll have 5 games. So there is change that needs to take place, but I don't think it needs to be with the head coach. I feel like he's the right guy for it. I think Coach Shanahan will have to have a conversation with Mr. Snyder at the end of the year. Let them give some time, maybe a week or 2, let the season get past them, and let them two just get into a room and really say, hey, what's the situation? How do we move forward? How do we get this thing right? One of the things that hasn't happened around here in Washington since Mr. Snyder's on this football team, there's been any stability at the head coach position. You're talking about, I think, now on the 7th head coach in 14 years, I think, since he's on the team. And sometimes when I look at and study the winning franchises, the perennial winning franchises, talking about the New England, Pittsburgh, teams like that, Green Bay, even Baltimore now, they have a sense of stability. They have a plan that they stick with it. And I think with this being said, Coach Shanahan is the right guy. He's going to have to. You can't stay status quo on every area of the football team. They'll have money to spend. This off season, which will definitely you'll have some personnel changes. That's just the National Football League. He'll address every situation and go from there. But I also think it'll be hard to do it with just 1 year left on this deal. And you're looking at the coach, as a 1 year deal. I mean, most people, like, is he a lame duck? So. I think you extend him, as crazy as that may sound, but I think you extend him to let him continue to build this thing the right way.
Would you have left, though, or would you be leaving if you'd put up better numbers and team was winning? Would you have felt the same way about retiring if the team was winning and you were putting up better numbers?
Yeah, it has nothing, again, it has nothing to do with me personally. Again, I felt like I can accomplish everything I can accomplish in the National Football League from a player standpoint. Obviously everybody wants to go out like Ray Lewis and, with the Super Bowl parade and winning the Super Bowl. And, that would be great to go out, but, it wasn't in the cards, for me if this is it, but it's more, again, about trying to leave a legacy and, putting some seeds in place, and hopefully they'll grow and fester, years down the road. And I can be proud of this organization, this franchise that I play for, and that's really how I look at it.
London, what's the 1% that would bring you back? And at what point did you hit that 90% figure? Was it early offseason?
Really, and I've shared this with you all in the past. For probably about the last 4 or 5 years, I've always thought about retirement and what do I want to do, and want to do some other things in life, because I think for me at least, in order to do it at the level that I've been able to do it, it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of sacrifice, whether it's, just this time spent, on training and meeting and watching extra film and, all the things that I've been able to do, and I do it, and I've enjoyed doing it, but I missed a lot of other parts of my life. I got 3 young children, so, they're back in Charlotte, so I'm missing parts of their life with them growing up. So that comes into play where, I'm talking to my wife and she's telling me about different things that the kids are doing, and, just talking to them. And when I get a chance to see them, it was really, as they've gotten older and started to do a little bit more things, it's like, I think this would probably be it. I also look at it, this being my 7th year in Washington, biblically speaking, the number 7 is marks completion. So, for me, I feel like my work is done here in Washington, and if their 1% does come, I don't know, man. Maybe I'll do a say-all or something.
Like without football in it?
I think it'll be great. Again, I got to have a beautiful wife, 3 beautiful, awesome children. 6, 5, and 3. They're just starting to do different things. My son, he loves football. My daughter, she's involved in gymnastics and some of the other things. My youngest, she's just a character. She has a great personalities, and just that part of it. I probably look to get into some broadcasting, different things like that. I love the game of football. Even right now, for me, the happiest times I have, the most enjoyment I have in game week is when I'm alone by myself and I'm with my video and I'm looking, at the iPad. I'm looking at the film and I'm dissecting the opponent, and just really, that's when I'm at my happiest, because now, I'm in my comfort. I'm in the area that I love being in. So football is always in my blood. You just never know what it'll hold down the road for me. But I'll always be around this game of football.
London, you've obviously had a great career. Many will debate whether you're a Hall of Famer. Are you a Hall of Famer in your mind and in your heart as you sit here today?
Well, I think that's for somebody else to decide. I don't have a vote on that type of stuff. David, you got a vote, don't you? I think you have to ask David. When that time comes, I think as you look at all the middle linebackers who've been in the National Football League selected to the Hall of Fame or elected to the Hall of Fame, when you compare me and compare them, I think it'll definitely leave for more debate.
London, your process the last few years has to get away from the season, sort of get away from the emotions of it before you made a decision. Why this time did you go about that a little differently?
Again, I still got 1% left. Just the reason why I'm doing it now is because this is more than likely going to be the last time I'm able to put on that burgundy and gold and run through that tunnel at FedEx and say thank you to the fans and it's just the Cowboys. I mean, it's a lot. And the last time we were in FedEx and I was embarrassed with the way we performed as a football team. And there's not many times on a football field where I felt embarrassed as a team, as a player. And that what we put on display against Kansas City, that hurt me to my core. So, with this, I want our fans to be riled up. I want it to be a special occasion. I want us to get that win. Want to leave with great memories.
You mentioned that every player wants to have a legacy. Mm-hmm. Yours is going to be your durability, your reliability. Played more straight games than any defensive player in history at a position where there are collisions. I mean, as you look back now, I know you haven't wanted to do this all season, but today's a little bit different. On that run of consecutive games, what do you take most pride in about just always being available? And do you think that is your legacy?
Obviously that's a part of my legacy. That's the thing that's talked about most, because when you look at it, it's hard for me to really grasp it because I'm still in the midst of it. And really the way I've approached it is to go about my business, being accountable and not wanting to let my teammates down and the coaching staff. And I always wanted to be able to be there for them and know that, hey, they can count on me and really even prove doubters wrong when there's a little nick or bump and they think, hey, is this going to be the end of the streak or whatever the case may be, to be able to say, you know what, I'm tough enough to get through this. So I'm sure that the consecutive games is definitely a part of my legacy. But I think as time goes past and people are able to really look at my career as a whole, you'll see what type of player that I was as well.
And then can you give me a moment when you played here in Washington that stands out the most? A moment in a game, a play, something that you'll never forget. There's several memories. I mean, you talk about seven seasons here. My first season here, obviously, that was the year Sean Taylor passed. So the dynamics of that, dealing with that, the emotions of that, when we took the field with 10 guys on the field, or just as a tribute to Sean, playing and losing that game, but then going on a run that we were able to go on at the end of that 07 season to make it into the playoffs. Last year was very special to me. When you look at where we were at 1 point 3-6, everybody had written us off, and to be able to get on that run, and I thought the way we rallied around each other as a team, just the attention to detail, the focus, how guys just really just locked in, the way Coach Shanahan, managed the team and stood in front of them and really mapped out the plan that we were going to go on to win those 7 games. And when it came into to fruition, that feeling of when we beat the Cowboys at the that 16 game of the season, that last game of the season, and it was finally our goal was achieved, and just the moment, the excitement, the euphoria that we felt as a football team to know we had done something really special. So that stands out as well.
London, there aren't many 38-year-old guys doing what you do. How much harder this year did it get for you to play at the level that you want? And how do you feel about this season? Did it feel different than in years past in terms of clearing those hurdles?
I think, just with the way I train myself, that part the last 4 or 5 years really hasn't been that much of a difference. I think, I felt better this year because of the injuries, surgeries I've had. My last year I was dealing with an ankle, elbow, things like that in the last few years, different things. Really, Sundays is no problem. You get to the game, you have that adrenaline. Throughout the week they do a great job of managing me, trying to, limit my reps in practice and stuff like that. I still know I can go out and make plays. So that's not the issue. So this year really wasn't any harder physically.
Well, I guess I was going to go on the same theme. And as much as we hate to admit it, all of us, age always wins out. And how hard is that to accept? All of us find it hard to accept, but how hard is that to accept?
Well, I'm not 28. I'm 38, and I understand that. You know, when you play, age is going to take away some of the things from you, especially when you're talking about a physical game or something that requires physical ability. So, but you know, you do adjustments and to combat that. You know, whether it's my alignment, you know, things like that. You figure out ways to combat that. So, you know, that's the part you adjust to. But from a competitive standpoint, things like that, I think you still have to go out and compete. Whether you're, you know, a young guy and you can run 4.3 or whatever, that doesn't mean you're going to go out and do the job better than I am.
London, if this truly is it, and you've lockered next to Robert for 2 years now, what will be your major takeaway from him as a young teammate, and also would you give him any advice on your way out the door in terms of how to handle his future?
You know, I think one of the things is, you know, Robert he's come in with a tremendous amount of pressure. When you talk about, you know, being a Heisman Trophy winner, so many draft picks they gave up to get him. This is an organization that hasn't had a franchise quarterback for over 20 years. So the amount of expectations that he had coming in and the way he performed last year, you know, he exceeded those expectations, you know, leading us to the playoffs. And really just from his I don't think he really changed, you know, his approach. There's a lot of people that pulls and tugs at him. But I think, you know, really this is a time for him to just kind of exhale. You know, if you look at it, at the end of the year, he hurt himself. He didn't have a chance to really exhale. This is a time for him to exhale, take a step back, you know, reevaluate, you know, different things and say, you know, hey, what do I need to get to be the player that he knows he can be, the player that everybody knows he can be. You know, that would be my advice for him. Just really take some time to clear his head and really decompress from everything that's happened, because he's really been on a whirlwind, if you think about it, since his senior year at Baylor, or his last year at Baylor. Thanks, London. All right, thanks, guys.